Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Solid Ground. Russell Mercer had built everything with his hands. The custom furniture business he'd grown from a garage workshop to a respected brand. The Immaculate Craftsman home in Portland's West Hills neighborhood. And the 15-year marriage to Diana that had once felt as solid as the oak he favored for his signature dining tables. At 43, Russell was a craftsman in every sense of the word. His hands were calloused but precise, his eyes sharp enough to spot a millimeter's variance in a joint. People who commissioned his work didn't just buy furniture, they invested in heirlooms. Unlike his father, a talented carpenter who'd drunk himself to death after Russell's mother abandoned them, Russell had built stability. Permanence. Diana had been a junior marketing executive when they met at a home and garden show where he was exhibiting. She'd approached his booth with genuine interest in his joinery techniques, and Russell, normally reserved with strangers, found himself explaining the distinction between dovetail and mortise and tenon joints to her for nearly an hour. Diana's laugh came easily. Her questions showed real curiosity, and by the end of the weekend, they'd exchanged numbers. "You built this business from nothing," Diana had said 5 years into their marriage, as they celebrated the opening of his first showroom. "Do you know how rare that is these days?" It wasn't just the business. They'd built a life. No children. A mutual decision after several miscarriages left Diana devastated, but they had created a partnership that felt complete. Russell handled the creative and production aspects of Mercer Custom Furniture, while Diana's marketing experience had transformed his local reputation into a regional brand with a 6-month waiting list. Now, as he lay beneath the kitchen sink cabinet, installing the custom plumbing for their kitchen renovation, Russell listened to his life being dismantled. "Have you told him you're moving out next month?" The voice belonged to Natalie, Diana's younger sister. "No way. I need to secure my promotion first, then take half the accounts." Diana's voice was different than he'd ever heard it, cold, calculating. "Vernon says I should be careful with the timing." "Vernon." Russell's grip tightened on the wrench in his hand. Vernon Price, the smooth-talking owner of Cascade Interior Design. The man who'd been sending an increasing number of clients Russell's way over the past year. The man who'd been meeting Diana for marketing strategy sessions that often ran late into the evening. "What if he contests the divorce?" Natalie asked. Diana's laugh was sharp. "Russell? He avoids conflict like it's radioactive. He'll roll over just to keep things civil. Besides, Vernon has connections with the best divorce attorney in the state. I just need to make it through the Berkeley project presentation, land that promotion, and then I can leave with my full bonus plus half of everything we've built." Russell lay perfectly still, the copper pipe forgotten in his hands. In his mind, he could see Diana and Natalie sitting at the kitchen island above him, probably drinking the specialty tea Diana imported from some boutique shop downtown. "But you've been married for 15 years, Natalie said, her voice lowering. "Are you sure Vernon's worth it?" "Vernon understands ambition. We're going to open our own design firm in Seattle once his non-compete expires. Russell was fine for building my life here, but Vernon and I are going places." The conversation shifted to logistics, which accounts Diana would claim in the divorce, how she copied key client information just in case, and Vernon's plans to poach Russell's most lucrative clients once Diana had secured her settlement. Russell didn't move. His breathing slowed as something calcified inside him. His father's voice echoed from decades past. "People will always disappoint you, son. It's what they do best." He finished the plumbing installation with mechanical precision, each movement deliberate and silent. When he finally emerged from beneath the sink, Diana and Natalie had moved to the back patio. He could see them through the window, Diana gesturing animatedly as she often did when excited about a new marketing concept. Russell continued the renovation over the next 5 days, installing the porcelain farmhouse sink Diana had special ordered from Italy, finishing the hickory flooring that would perfectly complement the cabinets, and mounting the custom open shelving Diana had insisted would open up the space. He said nothing about what he'd heard. On the 5th day, As Russell applied the final coat of sealant to the countertops, Diana wrapped her arms around him from behind. "It's perfect," she said, resting her cheek against his back. "I don't know what I was thinking with those shelves. You were right all along." She paused. "I'm sorry I've been so impossible lately. Work stress, you know. But this kitchen, it reminds me why we're so good together." Russell turned slowly to face her. For a moment, he studied her, the practiced sincerity in her hazel eyes, the carefully casual way she'd swept her chestnut hair into a messy bun, the slight tilt of her head that she used when she wanted something from him. "I'm glad you like it," he said simply. Diana blinked, perhaps expecting more. "Maybe we should celebrate tonight? I could make reservations at Bellamy's." "Sure," Russell said. "That sounds nice." Later, as Diana chatted about her upcoming presentation for the Berkeley hotel chain account, Russell watched her with newfound clarity. He didn't see his wife of 15 years anymore. He saw someone shaping a narrative, managing an asset, calculating returns. He saw someone who had learned that some things, once broken, cannot be fixed with regret. Chapter 2, Blueprints. The Berkeley presentation came and went. Diana secured both the account and her promotion to creative director at Pinnacle Marketing, complete with the substantial bonus she'd mentioned to Natalie. She brought home champagne that night, and as they toasted her success, Russell caught the momentary flash of guilt in her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, clinking her glass against his. "All those nights you listened to me practice my pitch." Russell smiled. "You've always been good at persuading people." 3 days after her promotion announcement, Russell began preparing his own designs. Not for furniture, but for what would come next. First, he called Neil Donovan, his oldest friend and the most successful real estate attorney in Portland. They'd known each other since high school, when Russell, the quiet shop class prodigy, had helped Neil build a hope chest for his mother's birthday. Despite their different paths, Neil to Dartmouth and law school, Russell to a furniture apprenticeship instead of college, they'd maintained their friendship through decades. "I need to talk to you," Russell said when Neil answered. "Not at your office." They met at the workshop behind Russell's showroom, where the scent of sawdust and varnish created a sanctuary from the outside world. Russell worked a piece of walnut with a hand plane as he outlined what he'd overheard. His movements were steady, rhythmic, revealing none of the turmoil beneath. Neil's usual confident demeanor faltered. "Jesus, Russ. I'm sorry." Russell shrugged. "I need to know my options. Legally, you could file first, claim emotional distress, possibly even fraud since she's been planning this and apparently transferring business information." But Neil hesitated. "But courts favor clean splits. Unless you can prove extensive financial misconduct, the most likely outcome is still close to 50-50 for assets acquired during the marriage." Russell nodded, setting down the hand plane. "That's not acceptable." Neil studied his friend. In 25 years, he'd never heard that tone from Russell. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking I need to change the design before the foundation is poured," Russell said. He pulled out a sketchbook, the same one he used for furniture designs, and opened it to a fresh page. "Let me show you what I have in mind." By the time Neil left 3 hours later, the blueprint was complete. The attorney looked shaken. "Are you sure about this, Russ?" "There's no going back." Russell ran his hand across the grain of the walnut he'd been working. "Wood doesn't lie, Neil. If there's a flaw, it reveals itself eventually. You just have to know how to look." The next day, Russell called Abigail Preston, the sharp-minded accountant who'd handled his business finances for the past decade. Unlike Diana's corporate world of presentations and promotional materials, Russell's business success had been built on word of mouth and uncompromising quality. Abigail had been instrumental in structuring his business finances to weather economic downturns while maintaining his small but dedicated staff of 4 craftsmen. "I need to restructure some things," Russell told her, quickly and quietly. Abigail, with her precise bob and perpetually ink-stained fingers, didn't ask questions beyond what was necessary. By the end of the week, Mercer Custom Furniture had undergone a transformation invisible to the casual observer, but significant to anyone examining the finances closely. While Diana was occupied with her new position, Russell initiated Phase 2. He contacted Laurel Montgomery, a former client whose interior design business competed directly with Vernon Price's Cascade Interior Design. 3 years earlier, Russell had created a show-stopping conference table for Laurel's office that had been featured in Pacific Northwest Design magazine. "I've been meaning to call you," Laurel said when they met for coffee. "That table still gets more compliments than anything else in my office." "I'm glad," Russell said, "but I'm here about something else." By the time they parted ways, Laurel's expression had transformed from confusion to cold determination. "Vernon Price has been undercutting me for years," she said. "Consider me invested in your project." The final piece came in the form of Boyd Winters, a former client who had commissioned an entire home's worth of furniture from Russell after selling his cybersecurity company for 8 figures. Boyd had been so impressed with Russell's work that they developed a casual friendship, occasionally meeting for beers to discuss Boyd's vintage motorcycle restoration hobby. "I need some information recovered," Russell explained during their meeting in Boyd's garage, where a partially restored 1968 Triumph Bonneville sat in pieces. Boyd wiped grease from his hands. "What kind of information?" "Digital, from a specific phone and laptop." Boyd's expression hardened. "Legal or illegal?" "Gray area," Russell admitted. "But it's my business information being taken." After a long pause, Boyd nodded. "I know someone. It'll be expensive." "That's not a problem." Over the next few weeks, as Diana worked late and took an increasing number of client dinners, Russell systematically implemented each element of his plan. To the outside world, and to Diana, nothing appeared to have changed. He worked in his shop, managed his business, and maintained the quiet, conflict-avoidant demeanor Diana had described to her sister. But beneath the surface, something fundamental had shifted. The man who had built their life with careful precision was now applying those same skills to its deconstruction. When Diana mentioned a weekend conference in Seattle, Russell simply nodded and said he'd use the time to catch up on commissions. He didn't mention that he knew Vernon Price would be speaking at the same conference. Didn't indicate that he was aware Diana had booked only one hotel room. The night before she left for Seattle, Diana seemed almost nervous as she packed. "Are you sure you don't mind me going? I know we usually do something for your birthday." Russell looked up from a book he was reading. "It's just another day. We can celebrate when you get back." Diana's relief was palpable. "You're the best. I promise I'll make it up to you." As he watched her finish packing, Russell felt a strange sense of calm. In his workshop, there was a concept called wood memory, the tendency of wood to try to return to its original shape despite being bent or formed differently. For 15 years, he had believed he and Diana were growing together, their grains aligning into something stronger than either could be alone. Now he understood they had merely been bent temporarily in the same direction, and Diana was returning to her true shape. Chapter 3: Excavation. While Diana was in Seattle with Vernon, Russell began the excavation phase of his plan. The foundation of their marriage might be crumbling, but before rebuilding, he needed to understand the full extent of the damage. He started with Diana's home office. Though they each maintained separate workspaces, his in the detached garage he converted into a design studio, hers in the spare bedroom upstairs, they had never kept secrets. Or so he had believed. Now, using the skills Boyd's contact had taught him, Russell accessed Diana's laptop. What he found confirmed everything he'd heard and more. Emails between Diana and Vernon dating back 18 months revealed not just an affair, but a plan to leverage Russell's client relationships and reputation while establishing their own competing business in Seattle. There were spreadsheets tracking his most profitable clients, notes on his techniques and suppliers, even drafts of a business plan for Price Mercer Design Collective, using his name, but excluding him entirely. Russell downloaded everything, his expression unchanging even as he discovered intimate exchanges that turned his stomach. This wasn't just betrayal. It was industrial espionage wrapped in marital deceit. Next, he turned to their finances. Despite Diana's belief that Russell remained oblivious to anything beyond his workshop, he had always maintained a comprehensive understanding of their financial position. Diana handled their day-to-day finances, but Russell reviewed everything quarterly, a habit from his early days of building his business from nothing. What he found now were subtle divergences, small transfers to an account he didn't recognize, Investment shifts that made little sense unless viewed as preparation for separation. By Sunday afternoon, Russell had compiled a complete picture of Diana's betrayal. He stored all the evidence securely, following Boyd's instructions for maintaining digital chain of custody. Then he erased all traces of his investigation and returned the house to its exact previous state. When Diana returned Sunday evening, flushed with what she claimed was conference excitement, Russell greeted her with the same gentle smile he'd worn for 15 years. "How was Seattle?" he asked, helping with her luggage. "Amazing," she said, not quite meeting his eyes. "The Berkeley project is going to open so many doors for me." "For us," Russell corrected softly. Diana's smile faltered for just a moment. "Of course, for us." That night, as Diana slept beside him, Russell lay awake. In the dark, he turned over a small object in his palm, a custom-made wooden puzzle box he'd created years ago, one of the first gifts he'd given Diana. It had 5 hidden compartments, revealed only through a specific sequence of moves that Diana had never fully mastered. She'd always needed his help to open the final chamber. It seemed fitting now, as he thought about the compartments Diana had kept hidden from him. Russell had always believed that working with wood had taught him patience. Now he understood it had taught him something else as well, how to see the true nature of things beneath their surface. The next morning, over breakfast, Diana mentioned that she would be working late all week to capitalize on the Berkeley momentum. "Actually," Russell said, "I was hoping you could be home for dinner on Wednesday. I wanted to talk to you about something." Diana looked up from her phone. "Is everything okay?" "Just some business ideas I want your opinion on," he said with a reassuring smile. "Nothing urgent." Diana relaxed. "Okay, I can make that work." 7 o'clock. "Perfect." As she left for work, kissing him quickly on the cheek, Russell returned to his workshop. The foundation was exposed now. It was time to begin the reconstruction. Chapter 4. Load-bearing walls. Wednesday arrived with unseasonable clarity for Portland in late autumn. Russell spent the morning in meetings with his small team of craftsmen, reviewing ongoing projects and discussing new techniques for an upcoming commission, a complete library for a tech executive's Lake Oswego home. Perry, his senior craftsman and de facto shop manager, noticed his distraction. "Everything all right, boss? You seem different." Russell looked up from a joint he'd been demonstrating. "Just working through some design challenges." It wasn't entirely a lie. He was indeed working through a complex design problem, just not one involving furniture. At noon, Russell received a text from Diana. "Still okay if I'm not home until 7? "Crazy day." "Take your time," he replied. "Dinner will be ready whenever you arrive." The afternoon unfolded according to Russell's careful planning. Neil arrived at the workshop at 2, bringing the documents they'd prepared. Boyd's contact delivered a small package containing digital evidence, professionally organized and authenticated. Laurel Montgomery called to confirm her part was in place. By 6, Russell had prepared Diana's favorite meal, seared scallops with risotto and roasted asparagus. He opened a bottle of the Willamette Valley Pinot Noir they'd discovered on their 10th anniversary trip. He set the dining table with the handcrafted place settings he'd made for their 5th anniversary, each piece featuring inlaid wood in a pattern that matched their wedding rings. Diana arrived at 7:15, looking harried but quickly composing herself when she saw the table. "What's all this?" she asked, setting down her bag and coat. "Just thought we deserved a nice dinner," Russell said, pulling out her chair. "It's been a while since we've had a meal without our phones or work talk." Diana looked momentarily uncertain before smiling. "You're right. This looks amazing." They ate with surprising ease, Russell asking thoughtful questions about her promotion and new responsibilities. Diana, perhaps relieved by his apparent obliviousness, grew increasingly relaxed and talkative. "The Berkeley account is just the beginning," she said, finishing her second glass of wine. "They're planning to expand to 6 new locations over the next 3 years. If we handle this well, we could be their exclusive marketing partner." Russell nodded. "That's impressive. You've always had a vision for growth." As they finished dessert, a pear tart from Diana's favorite bakery, Russell refilled their wine glasses and placed a folder on the table. "What's this?" Diana asked, the warmth in her voice giving way to caution. The business idea I mentioned, Russell said. I've been thinking about our future. Diana hesitated before opening the folder. Inside was a single document, a real estate listing for a historic building in Seattle's Pioneer Square district. Seattle. Diana's voice caught. You want to move to Seattle? Russell nodded. I've been thinking about expansion. Seattle has a strong market for high-end custom furniture, especially with all the tech money there. Diana's eyes widened, her fingers tightening around the wine glass. But your workshop, your team here, Perry can handle the Portland operations. I was thinking this could be a fresh start for us. You mentioned the Berkeley hotel chain is expanding. Seattle would be a central location for overseeing their West Coast properties. For a moment, genuine conflict crossed Diana's face, the opportunity aligning so perfectly with her secret plans while derailing her strategy for leaving him. This is unexpected, she said finally. When were you thinking of making this move? Soon, Russell said. In fact, I have an appointment to view the property next Monday. Monday? That's so fast. Russell reached across the table to take her hand. Sometimes you have to act quickly when the right opportunity presents itself. He paused, studying her face. Don't you agree? Diana nodded slowly. Yes, I suppose that's true. Great, Russell said, squeezing her hand before releasing it. Then you'll come with me? I've already booked 2 tickets. Ah, yes, of course. Russell smiled. Perfect. Now, there's one more thing. He reached beside his chair and produced a small wooden box, the puzzle box he'd made her years ago. I thought tonight would be a good occasion to give you this. Diana took the box, confusion evident. But you already gave me this years ago. I made you a new one, Russell explained. The original design had 5 compartments. This one has 7, each one representing a phase of our life together and our future. Diana turned the box in her hands, finding the first release mechanism just where it would be in her original box. The panel slid open, revealing a small silver key. What's this for? She asked. The next compartment will explain, Russell said. But that's enough business talk for tonight. I thought we could open each chamber of the box over the next few days, leading up to our Seattle trip. Later that night, as Diana slept, Russell slipped out of bed and went to his workshop. In the quiet darkness, illuminated only by a single lamp, he opened a hidden compartment in his own desk and reviewed the contents of a folder identical to the one he'd shown Diana, with one key difference. His copy contained not just the Seattle property listing, but the complete documentation of Diana's infidelity and business espionage. On his workbench sat 6 more wooden boxes, each one identical to the one he'd given Diana tonight, each containing a different key, a different revelation, a different mechanism for dismantling the structure she thought she was building with Vernon Price. The next morning, Diana left for work earlier than usual, the puzzle box tucked in her bag after several failed attempts to open the second compartment. I'll figure it out, she promised with frustration that barely masked her anxiety. I'm sure you will, Russell said. Or I can show you tonight. The moment she left, Russell initiated the next phase. He called Vernon Price's office directly. Mr. Price, this is Russell Mercer, he said when Vernon answered. I was hoping to discuss a potential collaboration. Vernon's momentary silence spoke volumes. Russell, good to hear from you. What kind of collaboration did you have in mind? I'm exploring some new business directions. I'd rather discuss it in person, if you have time. They arranged to meet that afternoon at Vernon's downtown office. Russell arrived precisely on time, dressed not in his usual workshop clothes, but in a tailored suit that Diana had insisted he buy for client meetings. Vernon's office projected exactly the image he cultivated: sleek, contemporary, expensive. The man himself matched his surroundings, with his silver-streaked dark hair and carefully maintained physique that spoke of regular personal training sessions. Russell, welcome, Vernon said, extending his hand with practiced warmth. Can I offer you something to drink? No, thank you, Russell said, taking a seat across from Vernon's glass desk. I'll keep this brief. I'm planning to expand my business to Seattle. I'm looking at a property in Pioneer Square next week. Vernon's composure slipped for just a microsecond before he recovered. Seattle? That's interesting. Any particular reason? Market research suggests there's significant demand for high-end custom pieces there. Plus, Diana mentioned the Berkeley hotel account has West Coast expansion plans. It seemed logical to position ourselves closer to that potential business. Vernon nodded slowly. Diana has certainly been instrumental in that account, though I wasn't aware you were considering such a significant move. Russell smiled. My wife is very talented. I've always believed in supporting her career as she supported mine. The conversation continued for another 15 minutes, a masterclass in subtext and calculated revelation. Russell mentioned specific details about Seattle property values and business permits that he knew would confirm to Vernon that his plan was serious. He referenced mutual clients in ways that suggested he was oblivious to Vernon's involvement with his wife. By the time Russell left, Vernon was already reaching for his phone, undoubtedly to call Diana. Outside in his truck, Russell checked his watch. The meeting had ended exactly on schedule. He made one more call before driving away. Is everything proceeding as discussed? He asked when Laurel Montgomery answered. Exactly as planned, she confirmed. I just got off the phone with the Berkeley executives. They were very interested in our alternative proposal. Good, Russell said. Let's move forward. Chapter 5. Structural Integrity. Diana was already home when Russell arrived that evening, pacing the kitchen with barely concealed agitation. You met with Vernon today, she said, not bothering with a greeting. Russell hung his jacket calmly. Yes, I did. I thought his insights on the Seattle market might be valuable. Why wouldn't you discuss that with me first? I'm discussing it with you, Russell said. We talked about it last night. I'm just doing due diligence before our trip on Monday. Diana ran a hand through her hair. This is all happening so fast. I'm not sure Seattle is the right move for us right now. Russell studied her for a moment. Vernon seemed to think it had potential. He mentioned he has contacts there who might be interested in collaboration. Diana's eyes narrowed slightly. What exactly did you two discuss? Business opportunities, Russell said simply. Location advantages. Potential clients. He moved to the refrigerator, pulling out ingredients for dinner. Have you had any luck with the second compartment of the box? Diana's hand went unconsciously to her bag. Not yet. Would you like me to show you? After a moment's hesitation, Diana retrieved the puzzle box. Russell guided her through the sequence. A sliding panel that revealed a hidden button, which when pressed released the second chamber. Inside was a folded document. Diana opened it slowly. It was the deed to their house, with a notation transferring full ownership to her name. I don't understand, she said, looking up at Russell. If we're moving to Seattle, we'll need to decide what to do with this place, Russell explained. I thought transferring it to you might simplify things. You've always loved this house more than I have. Diana stared at the document. This is a big decision, Russell. It's already done, he said. I filed the paperwork yesterday. The house is yours now, free and clear. But why? Russell turned back to the vegetables he was chopping. Consider it the first step in our new chapter. That night, Diana made a series of phone calls from the privacy of her car in the driveway. Russell, using the monitoring software Boyd's contact had installed, listened as she frantically consulted with Vernon about this unexpected development. He's just giving me the house, Diana said, her voice strained. Something doesn't feel right. It's perfect timing, Vernon insisted. If he's putting assets in your name before knowing about us, that's in our favor. It prevents him from claiming you manipulated him later. But Seattle? That throws everything off schedule. We were supposed to have 3 more months before making our move. Plans change, Vernon said. We adapt. This could actually work better for us. Let him establish the Seattle connection. Then we step in. Their conversation continued for another 20 minutes, adjusting their strategy to accommodate Russell's unexpected moves. Neither seemed to consider that they might be the ones being maneuvered. The next day brought the third compartment of the puzzle box. This one required a more complex sequence to open, a metaphor not lost on Russell. Inside was a USB drive. What's this? Diana asked, turning it over in her hand. Financial records, Russell said. I've transferred half of our joint savings and investments into an account in your name only. The details are on that drive, along with the passwords you'll need. Diana's face paled. Russell, Why are you doing all this? He took her hand. I want our fresh start to be truly fresh. No complications, no old baggage. But these are major financial decisions. Shouldn't we consult with someone first? I already did, Russell assured her. Neil helped with everything. It's all properly documented and legal. Diana visibly relaxed at the mention of Neil, whom she knew to be meticulous and ethical. Neil knows about all this? About Seattle? Russell nodded. He thinks it's a solid plan. The next morning, Russell noticed Diana had left her puzzle box on the kitchen counter. Using a craftsman's precision, he swapped it with another identical box, the next in a sequence. By evening, when Diana discovered the switch, she would find herself unable to open the third compartment again, forced to work through a new puzzle to reach the fourth chamber. Meanwhile, Russell met with Abigail Preston to finalize the restructuring of his business assets. The changes appeared to be preparing for expansion, but in reality created a firewall between his core business and the phantom Seattle venture he'd been discussing. Are you sure about this timeline? Abigail asked, reviewing the documents. It's aggressive. I'm sure, Russell said. Everything needs to be in place by Monday. That evening, Diana managed to open the fourth compartment of the new puzzle box. Inside was a printed email exchange between Russell and Laurel Montgomery, discussing a potential merger of their businesses. You're partnering with Laurel? Diana couldn't keep the alarm from her voice. Vernon says she's ruthless with competitors. She's a shrewd businesswoman, Russell acknowledged. But the partnership makes sense for Seattle. Her client list complements mine, and she has the design expertise to handle the Berkeley account if you decide to stay with Pinnacle here in Portland. Diana set down the email with forced casualness. Why would I stay in Portland if you're moving to Seattle? Russell looked at her directly. I'd never ask you to choose between your career and our marriage, Diana. If the Seattle timing doesn't work for you professionally, we can maintain 2 residences temporarily. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. If Diana insisted on coming to Seattle immediately, she would derail her own carefully laid plans with Vernon. If she chose to stay in Portland, she would cement Russell's apparent belief in her devotion to her career at Pinnacle, making her eventual betrayal even more damning. That's very understanding of you, Diana said finally. Russell smiled. 15 years of marriage teaches you what's important. Later that night, Diana made another call to Vernon, this time taking greater precautions by driving to a nearby park. The monitoring software still captured everything. He's partnering with Laurel Montgomery, Diana hissed. Do you know what that means? Calm down, Vernon said, though his own voice held an edge. This changes things, but we can adjust. Adjust? Vernon, Laurel has been trying to poach your clients for years. If she gets access to the Berkeley account through Russell, that won't happen, Vernon insisted. We'll accelerate our timeline. When you go to Seattle with him on Monday, that's when we'll make our move. As Diana drove home, Russell sat in his workshop, listening to the final pieces of their plan fall into place. The framework was nearly complete. All that remained was to see if the structure would hold under pressure. Chapter 6, Crossbeams. Sunday morning brought heavy rain and the 5th compartment of the puzzle box. This one required Diana to align 3 different sliding panels simultaneously, a challenge that caused visible frustration as she struggled with it over breakfast. Need help? Russell offered after watching her fail for the 3rd time. No, Diana snapped, then immediately softened. Sorry, just tired. Big week ahead. Take your time, Russell said. No rush. When Diana finally managed to open the compartment an hour later, she found a single key with a paper tag attached. Written on it was an address in Seattle's Pioneer Square district, the building Russell had shown her in the listing. What's this for? She asked, holding up the key. I made an offer on the building, Russell said, looking up from his newspaper. It was accepted yesterday. That's the key to the main entrance. Diana stared at him. You bought a building without seeing it in person? I had Neil review everything, and I did a virtual tour. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts. Russell folded his newspaper deliberately. Is that going to be a problem? No, of course not, Diana said quickly. I'm just surprised. It's not like you to make impulsive decisions. Is it impulsive if I've been planning it for months? Diana blinked. Months? You never mentioned anything. Sometimes I like to work things out completely before presenting them, Russell said. I learned that from you, actually. How you always perfect your marketing presentations before showing anyone. The comparison visibly unsettled Diana. For the first time, uncertainty flashed in her eyes, not just about Russell's plans, but about how much he might know of hers. Well, she said finally, I guess we'll see it together tomorrow. Looking forward to it, Russell said. That afternoon, Russell made final preparations while Diana visited her sister Natalie. He confirmed details with Neil, Laurel, and Boyd. He reviewed the contents of the 6th and 7th compartments of the puzzle box. He packed a small bag for the Seattle trip. When Diana returned from Natalie's, she seemed more composed, more certain. I've been thinking about the Seattle move, she said over dinner. I think it's the right decision. I can commute back to Portland as needed until we're fully established there. Russell nodded. I'm glad you feel that way. It'll be an adjustment, but I think it's the best move for our future. Diana reached across the table to take his hand. I know I've been distant lately. Work has been consuming me, but I want you to know I'm committed to us, to our future together. The performance was flawless, the slight vulnerability in her voice, the earnest eye contact, the gentle pressure of her fingers against his. Had Russell not heard her planning with Vernon, he might have believed every word. I never doubted that, he said softly. That night, as they prepared for bed, Diana attempted to open the 6th compartment of the puzzle box. This one required not just sliding panels and hidden buttons, but a specific sequence of rotations that had to be executed perfectly. After 30 minutes of increasingly frustrated attempts, she set aside. I'll try again tomorrow. We have an early flight, Russell reminded her. Maybe you should wait until we're in Seattle. Diana nodded, placing the box in her overnight bag. Seattle it is. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable clarity. Their flight to Seattle departed on schedule, Diana growing increasingly tense as they approached the city. Russell maintained his calm demeanor, discussing the renovations the Pioneer Square building would need and the potential for new client relationships in the area. A car was waiting for them at the airport, arranged by Neil, though Russell didn't mention this detail to Diana. They drove directly to Pioneer Square, where the imposing brick building stood at the corner of a historic block. It has good bones, Russell commented as they approached. The upper floors need work, but the main level is ready for a showroom. Diana nodded distractedly, checking her phone for the 3rd time in as many minutes. Inside, the space was exactly as Russell had described. A grand open area with high ceilings, exposed brick, and large windows that would showcase furniture beautifully. They toured the 1st floor, Russell pointing out specific locations for display pieces and a small design consultation area. What do you think? He asked as they completed the circuit. It's perfect, Diana said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Exactly what we need. Let's check the upper floors, Russell suggested, leading her toward a freight elevator at the back. There's office space on 2, and 3 could be converted to a workshop or additional showroom. As they rode up in silence, Diana's phone buzzed with a text. She read it quickly, then put the phone away, her posture subtly changing. The 2nd floor was divided into several office spaces arranged around a central area. Russell led Diana through each one, describing potential uses, watching as her attention clearly focused elsewhere. This would make a great marketing office for you, he said, opening the door to the largest space. Northern exposure, plenty of natural light. Inside, seated at a conference table, were Neil Donovan, Laurel Montgomery, and Boyd Winters. Diana froze in the doorway. What is this? Russell gestured for her to enter. The final phase of our Seattle plan. As Diana reluctantly stepped into the room, Russell closed the door behind them. On the conference table sat the 6th puzzle box, identical to the one in Diana's overnight bag, but already open to reveal its contents. Printed copies of Diana's emails with Vernon, the business plan for their Seattle venture, and financial records showing the client information she had copied. You should sit down, Russell said quietly. We have a lot to discuss. Chapter 7, Joint Work. Diana stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the open puzzle box. The color drained from her face as comprehension dawned. How long have you known? She asked, her voice barely audible. Since the kitchen renovation, Russell replied. I was under the sink cabinet when you and Natalie discussed your plans. Diana sank into a chair, her composure crumbling. Russell, I can explain. No need, Russell interrupted, taking a seat across from her. Your emails with Vernon explained everything quite thoroughly. The timing of your exit, the clients you plan to take, the accounts you've been diverting. He gestured to Boyd. Mr. Winters helped recover all the digital evidence. Boyd nodded, his expression grim. Everything has been authenticated and documented. Chain of custody is intact. Diana's eyes darted between the faces around the table. This is ridiculous. Whatever you think you found. Please don't, Russell said, his voice still quiet but with an edge that silenced her. We're beyond that now. Neil slid a folder across the table. These are the legal implications of what we've uncovered, Mrs. Mercer. Industrial espionage. Breach of fiduciary duty. Fraud. The criminal penalties alone could result in significant jail time. And that's before we consider the civil liabilities, Laurel added. My firm has already notified the Berkeley hotel chain of Vernon's attempt to secure their business through deceptive practices. Diana's professional mask reasserted itself. This is absurd. I've done nothing wrong legally. Our marriage is separate from business matters. Not when you used our marriage to access proprietary business information, Russell corrected. Not when you and Vernon planned to leverage my client relationships built over decades. What do you want? Diana demanded, her voice hardening. Money? Is that what this ambush is about? Russell shook his head. If it were about money, I wouldn't have transferred the house and accounts to your name. He leaned forward. This is about consequences. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of traffic below. Diana's eyes narrowed as she calculated her options. Vernon will be here any minute, she said finally. We should discuss this with all parties present. Vernon isn't coming, Laurel said, checking her watch. Right about now. He's meeting with the Berkeley executives, who are informing him that they've awarded their design contract to Montgomery Interiors instead of Cascade. Diana's composure wavered. That's impossible. The contract was secured last week. It was, Russell agreed, until Laurel presented them with evidence that Vernon planned to inflate their costs by 30% to fund your new venture together. They were quite interested in that information. A tentative knock at the door interrupted them. Neil rose to answer it, admitting a nervous young woman with a tablet. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but I have confirmation from Ms. Montgomery. Laurel took the tablet, reviewed the information, and nodded. Thank you, Amanda. After the assistant left, Laurel turned to Diana. Vernon just lost the Berkeley contract. All 7 properties, current and future. Diana's hands clenched into fists. This is illegal. You can't interfere with established business relationships. We didn't interfere, Russell said. We simply provided information that allowed the client to make a more informed decision. He opened another folder. Just as we've done with your other clients at Pinnacle. Diana's eyes widened. What have you done? Nothing yet, Russell assured her. That depends on what happens next. Neil placed another document on the table. This is a settlement agreement. The terms are straightforward. Diana didn't touch it. I want my attorney present. Call him, Russell encouraged. Brian Hoffman, right? Vernon's connection with the best divorce attorney in the state. He nodded to Boyd, who slid a phone across the table. Use my phone. It's secure. Diana hesitated, then pulled out her own phone and dialed. After a brief conversation, her face hardened further. He can't make it. Says he has a conflict. Interesting timing, Russell commented. For the first time, uncertainty crept into Diana's expression. What exactly are you proposing? Russell gestured to Neil, who outlined the terms. Diana would resign from Pinnacle immediately. She would retain the house and the accounts Russell had transferred to her name, approximately 30% of their marital assets. She would sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding Russell's business practices and client relationships. She would have no further contact with Vernon Price. In exchange, Russell would not pursue criminal charges or civil litigation. And if I refuse? Diana asked. Then everything we've gathered goes to the appropriate authorities, Russell said simply. The evidence of corporate espionage alone would end your career. The fraud charges would likely result in jail time. Diana studied Russell's face, perhaps searching for the conflict-avoidant husband she thought she knew. You wouldn't do that. 15 years of marriage. 5 days ago, you regretted everything you said, Russell interrupted, echoing her words to Natalie after she'd realized her mistake. Remember? When you thought I might have overheard something. You were right to worry. Something shifted in Diana's expression. A final realization that the man across from her was not the one she had believed she could manipulate. I need time to consider this, she said finally. You have until the end of the day, Russell replied. We'll be here. As Diana left the room to clear her head, Boyd followed at a discreet distance, ensuring she didn't attempt to contact Vernon or destroy evidence. When they were alone, Neil turned to Russell. Are you absolutely sure about this? Once we proceed, there's no going back. Russell nodded. I'm sure. You're letting her keep a significant portion of the assets, Neil pointed out. After what she planned to do. The assets aren't the point, Russell said. Never were. Laurel studied him thoughtfully. What is the point, then? Russell looked out the window at the Seattle skyline. Integrity. You can't build anything lasting without it. 3 hours later, Diana returned. Whatever calculations she had made during her absence had led to a cold pragmatism. She signed the settlement agreement without further argument, her signature as precise and controlled as everything else about her professional persona. Is that it? She asked when the final document was countersigned. Almost, Russell said. He placed the 7th puzzle box on the table. One last compartment. Diana looked at it with undisguised resentment. I'm not in the mood for more games, Russell. It's not a game, he said, opening the 7th compartment himself. Inside was a single item, the original wooden puzzle box he had given her years ago, the one she had never fully mastered. Keep it, Diana said, standing. I never understood why you thought those boxes were so special anyway. Russell nodded, unsurprised. That's why we're here today. As Diana left with Neil to formalize her resignation from Pinnacle, Russell remained in the conference room with Laurel and Boyd. What now? Boyd asked. Seattle was just a setup, right? Russell shook his head. No, I'm keeping the building. Laurel raised an eyebrow. Seriously? After all this? Good bones, Russell said, echoing his earlier assessment. Just needs the right foundation. Chapter 8. Finish work. 1 month after the Seattle confrontation, Russell stood in his Portland workshop, examining the grain of a piece of black walnut destined to become a conference table. The wood told its story through the pattern of its growth rings. Years of drought and abundance, stress and recovery. Perry approached, wiping his hands on a shop towel. That's beautiful stock. For the winter's commission? Russell nodded. Boyd's expanding his office. Needs a statement piece for the new boardroom. Speaking of expansion, Perry said, How's the Seattle project coming? On schedule, Russell replied. Contractors finished the upper floor renovation last week. The showroom build-out starts Monday. The Seattle property had indeed become a reality, though not in the way Diana and Vernon had envisioned. Russell had hired a manager from a respected Seattle furniture gallery to run the new location, which would focus on smaller production pieces rather than one-of-a-kind commissions. It would provide additional income while allowing him to maintain his creative focus in Portland. The aftermath of Diana's departure had been managed. Neil had handled the legal dissolution of their marriage with minimal public drama. The craftsmen at the workshop had been told simply that Diana had decided to pursue other opportunities. Clients noticed no disruption in their orders or relationships. Vernon Price had not fared as well. The loss of the Berkeley contract had triggered a financial crisis at Cascade Interior Design. When other clients began to question his business practices, a slow exodus followed. Within weeks, Vernon was forced to lay off half his staff. His non-compete agreement prevented him from starting fresh elsewhere in the Pacific Northwest. As for Diana, she had disappeared from Portland completely. According to Natalie, who had reached out to Russell with a mixture of apology and concern, Diana had moved to Chicago to rebuild. She had left the Portland house on the market with a real estate agency, unwilling to handle the sale personally. Mr. Donovan called earlier, Perry mentioned as he returned to his own project. Said he'd stop by this afternoon. Russell nodded his acknowledgement. Neil had become a more frequent visitor to the workshop since the divorce, often bringing lunch and legal questions disguised as casual conversation. Russell recognized it as his friend's way of checking on his well-being without being obvious. When Neil arrived at 3, he carried not lunch, but a bottle of 18-year-old scotch. Bit early for that, isn't it? Russell asked, setting aside his tools. Neil placed the bottle on a workbench. Consider it workshop inventory for special occasions. They moved to Russell's office at the back of the shop, a small room with windows overlooking the production floor, furnished with pieces Russell had built during various phases of his career. "How's the Seattle project?" Neil asked once they were seated. "Coming along. Should be open by March." Neil nodded, studying his friend. "And how are you coming along?" Russell considered the question. "I'm fine, Neil. Are you?" Because normal people don't execute multi-month revenge plans with the precision of a military operation and then just go back to making furniture. A faint smile crossed Russell's face. "What would you prefer? That I fall apart? Start drinking like my father?" "I'd prefer some indication that you're processing what happened," Neil said. 15 years is a long time to invest in someone who betrayed you. Russell rose and moved to a cabinet behind his desk. He withdrew a small wooden box. Not a puzzle box this time, but a simple container with a hinged lid. From it, he removed a folded paper and handed it to Neil. It was a sketch of Diana, drawn on the back of a furniture design, dated from the early days of their relationship. The portrait captured not just her appearance, but a quality of genuine warmth that had vanished from the woman Neil had seen in Seattle. "I didn't marry the woman you met in that conference room," Russell said quietly. "That person emerged over time, decision by decision." Neil refolded the sketch. "You never suspected? In all those years?" Russell returned to his chair. "I chose not to. That's different from not seeing. And now I build what's next." Neil recognized the tone. The conversation was over. He changed the subject to the legal structure of the Seattle expansion, and they spent the next hour discussing practical matters. As Neil was leaving, he paused at the door. "Laurel Montgomery called me yesterday. Said she has a client who needs custom pieces for a whole house. Wanted to know if you were taking new commissions." Russell raised an eyebrow. Laurel doesn't typically refer residential clients. This one's special, apparently. Tech entrepreneur from San Francisco who bought an estate in wine country. 8-figure budget for interiors. "I'll call her," Russell promised. After Neil left, Russell returned to the black walnut waiting in the main shop. He ran his hand along the grain, feeling the story beneath his fingers. We didn't lie. If there were flaws, they revealed themselves to those who knew how to look. He picked up his tools and began to work. Chapter 9. Weatherproofing. 6 months after the Seattle confrontation, Russell stood in the newly opened Mercer Design showroom in Pioneer Square, watching as the first customers explored the space. The renovation had transformed the historic building while preserving its character. Exposed brick walls contrasted with sleek white display pedestals showcasing smaller versions of Russell's signature pieces. Stephanie Wu, the gallery manager he'd hired from a respected Seattle design firm, approached with a clipboard. "First day numbers are strong. 3 commissions already, and it's only noon." Russell nodded his approval. Stephanie had proven to be an excellent hire, knowledgeable about both the design world and the Seattle market, with a client list that complemented his own. "The Berkeley Hotel representatives are coming at 2, she reminded him. "They want to discuss custom pieces for their new flagship property." "I'll be ready," Russell assured her. The Berkeley contract had expanded under Laurel's management. What began as marketing services had grown to include interior design for all 7 properties, with Russell providing signature furniture pieces for public spaces. The collaboration had been so successful that they were formalizing it into a joint venture, Montgomery Mercer Design Collaborative. As Russell made a final inspection of the showroom before the Berkeley meeting, his phone buzzed with a text from Boyd. "News you should see. Check your email." The message contained a link to a Chicago business publication. The headline read, "Price Design Studios faces lawsuit from former partner." The article detailed how Diana's attempt to establish a new design firm in Chicago with Vernon had collapsed amid accusations of financial misconduct. Vernon, finally free of his non-compete restrictions, had joined her there only to discover that Diana had been diverting company funds to a personal account. The resulting legal battle had left both professionally compromised. Russell closed the article without finishing it. The information neither surprised nor satisfied him. What Diana and Vernon did now was their own business. A structure built on a flawed foundation would inevitably fail, with or without his involvement. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Natalie. "Can we talk?" Russell hesitated before responding. His relationship with Diana's sister had been complicated by the divorce. Natalie had reached out several times, apologetic for her role in the deception, insisting she hadn't known the full extent of Diana's plans. "About what?" He finally replied. "Diana's trying to sell the house. Lower the price again. No takers. I'm worried about her." Russell considered not responding, but eventually typed, "That's not my concern anymore, Natalie." Her response came quickly. She made terrible mistakes, but 15 years together should count for something. This time, Russell didn't reply. He put his phone away and returned to preparing for the Berkeley meeting. That evening, after a successful presentation to the hotel executives, Russell found himself alone in the Seattle showroom. The space after hours had a different quality, peaceful, with the furniture's silhouettes creating interesting shadows under the display lighting. He moved through the showroom, making small adjustments to the placement of pieces, noting items that had drawn particular attention during the day. Near the back, he paused at a display of his puzzle boxes, smaller versions of the ones he'd created for Diana, available as limited edition items. A customer earlier had spent nearly 30 minutes trying to open one, fascinated by the challenge. "It's like getting to know a person," she commented, layer by layer, discovering what's hidden inside. Russell had smiled at the observation, but hadn't shared his own thoughts. That some boxes, once opened, revealed emptiness where you expected to find substance. His phone buzzed again with a message from Neil. "Dinner? I'm in Seattle for depositions." They met at a small restaurant near the waterfront, the kind of place that focused on quality rather than trendiness. Neil arrived late, apologetic and slightly harried from his day in court. "The Seattle venture looks good," Neil commented after they ordered. "Stephanie seems to have things well in hand." Russell nodded. "She does. The Berkeley meeting went well, too. I heard. Laurel called me, ecstatic about the expanded contract. They discussed business for a while before Neil shifted to a more personal topic. Diana's attorney contacted me today." Russell's expression didn't change. "About what?" "The house still hasn't sold. She's underwater on the mortgage, apparently made some bad investments with Vernon. She's asking if you consider buying it back at a reduced price." "No," Russell said simply. Neil nodded, unsurprised. "That's what I told him. Also said any further communication should go through me, not directly to you." They ate in silence for a few minutes before Neil spoke again. "You know, most people in your situation would have taken her for everything in the divorce. The fact that you let her keep the house and accounts says something." "What does it say?" Russell asked, curious about his friend's perspective. Neil considered his answer. "That beneath it all, you're still the guy who builds things to last, even when they don't." After dinner, Russell declined Neil's offer a ride and walked back to the small apartment he kept above the showroom. The Seattle night was clear but cold, the kind of weather that reminded him of the evening he'd proposed to Diana on Mount Hood, both of them laughing as snow caught in her hair. The memory came without pain now, just recognition of something that had once been real but no longer existed. Like examining the rings of a tree that had already been cut, processed, and transformed into something new. In his apartment, Russell went to his desk and opened the bottom drawer. Inside was the original puzzle box he'd made for Diana years ago, the one she'd left behind, saying she never understood why he thought it was special. He turned it in his hands, feeling the weight of the wood, the precision of the joinery. Then he placed it back in the drawer and closed it firmly. Outside his window, Seattle continued its nighttime rhythm. Traffic and distant conversations, lights changing in windows across the way. Russell turned his attention to the sketches on his desk, designs for new pieces, new collections, new directions. The past had been weatherproofed, sealed against further damage. What mattered now was what he would build next. In the morning, Russell woke early and went down to the showroom before it opened. He moved through the space, making minor adjustments, seeing not just what was there, but what could be. By the time Stephanie arrived to open for the day, he had filled several pages of his sketchbook with new ideas. "You look focused," she observed as she prepared to register. "New commission?" "Just possibilities," Russell replied. When the first customers arrived, a couple planning to furnish a newly purchased home, Russell greeted them with genuine interest in their vision. As they described what they hoped to create together, he listened for the underlying story, recognizing that his role was not just to build furniture, but to help construct the physical framework of their shared life. Some structures were meant to last. Others needed to be dismantled to make way for something stronger. The craft was in knowing the difference. Russell knew. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.